Hey everybody, Danny Maude here. Thanks for joining us. This week we're talking fairway woods. Maybe your 3-wood, your 5-wood, or even your 7-wood. How do you set up to a fairway wood? How do you strike it consistently? Why is it that sometimes you are topping your fairway woods when it seems like exactly the same swing? Well, I had a couple of students come and see me this week with probably similar problems that you have. You know, they weren't hitting their fairway woods very far. Sometimes they were topping it. They certainly couldn't get it up in the air to get the maximum distance. And they had a couple of common problems I see when you try to strike either your 3-wood or your 5-wood. I want to share with you exactly what they are in this week's training because I know it could really help. Before I do though, look, if you're new to the channel and this is one of your first videos of mine, please consider subscribing. Press that little bell button next to subscribe button. You get notified every time I release a video just like this one. Plus, look, if you enjoy the video, I have a free practice plan that you can download in the description box below. Don't have to remember a thing. It's bullet points from this session you can take to driving range if you enjoy the video and help yourself and go and work on your fairway woods. So let's get started. So let's start with how we're supposed to set up to the golf ball. Well, with a fairway wood, it's not like a driver, right? We're not trying to hit up on the ball with a fairway. We actually want to strike slightly down on the golf ball. If you look at some of the TrackMan numbers, the best players in the world strike literally 2 or 3 degrees down on the fairway woods. This is really important. So we're going to reflect that in the way we set up to it. So it's really simple. Stance is a little bit wider than an iron, maybe just about shoulder width apart. And the idea here is that you're providing a platform for stability. This is the first thing. The ball position, I would say here, is in between. Look at this is my center of my stance. It doesn't have to be perfect. The ball is in between my center and the lead heel here. All right. Then the handle here is on the inside of my lead thigh. So the handle you can see is slightly ahead of the club face here because what we're going to need to do, we want to put a pressure on that golf ball. What we don't want to do is have this kind of weak flick or try to get underneath the golf ball. Particularly if you're seeing the ball going along the ground, you're hitting the bottom part of the golf club. So what we want to do, we want to put a pressure on that ball. That's how we hit a ball, right? So this is the basic setup. Get ourselves set here, handle slightly on the inside of the lead thigh, and we're getting ourselves ready there, look, to put a pressure on that ball and strike it. So in a small way, it would kind of look a little bit like this. Just a nice small swing. Cool, so you could just hit some shots with that setup if you like, just getting to get a feel for it, particularly if it's new to you. So we said, look, we want to put a pressure on that golf ball. What does it really mean? Okay, well, pressure is this. You're putting a pressure on the ball. What you're not doing is kind of flicking it. I see this a hell of a lot. So the question is, what is the best way of doing that? Well, most of the time, by the way, and this is what was happening to one of my clients who was really struggling with his fairway wood, Stephen. He was struggling with striking his irons too because it kind of relates. He was starting the golf swing with a flick of the wrists first. Now when you flick the wrists here, you pretty much, it's the opposite happens on the way down. You flick them on the way back, they're going to have to flick on the way down. This creates this kind of very weak position and it starts to get the club head almost working up too much on the fairway wood. So you'd start hitting the bottom of the club and it rolls along the ground. Plus, because it's flicking, it's not very powerful. What we want to create is this. The question is, how? Well, watch this. We need to have what I like to call the drag and lag. So what you're doing is you're dragging, in theory, the club back here. So look, the head's almost dragged by the body back. And then, because you've started it this way, I'm exaggerating huge just for you really, and exaggerate the image. Dragging it back, it then does the opposite on the way down. Can you see this? I'll do it one-handed so you can see this. If you drag here, then you get the lag here, and that helps to get compression. Question is, how do you go about doing it? Well, Stephen loved this exercise because it's so simple. All I gave him was this. I got him to set up to a ball, and I actually got him to just simply do this. Set up, so he got comfortable with a fairly narrow stance. And then what I got him to do was just take a step, start the swing with a small step to the right, to start the whole motion off. Now when he started this, he kind of did this. He went step, paused, go. That's not what we're after here. What we want to have is we want this overflowing motion, because if you start the swing with the ground up, it's just like you would do if you were throwing balls. It's just so natural. But it also gets everything organized. So watch this. narrow stance, step to what you'd be your normal stance, it's step, go. That creates a drag and then the lag. And suddenly, because you step this way, you then naturally, the reverse happens on the way down, it just happens naturally. You step, and you create this wonderful motion like this, which creates the lag. Let's have a look at it. This was just curative. It was amazing, the result on this, almost instantly. We did tell him he had to let go a little bit because he was being a little bit methodical with it to start with. He was kind of maybe a bit nervous, so you just watch out if you're finding the same. He'd start and, like I said, pause and stop. That's not the idea. You've really got to let go, and don't worry if you hit a few dodgy shots with this. This is all part of the process. So we get ourselves set here. I'm a fairly narrow stance, and then all I do, look, I step and I go. Simple as that. Let's have another look at that in action. So we get ourselves set, pick it up, feet together, get ourselves nice and comfortable here, step, and go. So you can see it's such a simple exercise, but you do need to let go. It feels strange, doesn't it? But this is a dynamic, natural move. When one of the reasons that our sport's sometimes difficult, the ball is stationary. Unfortunately, same with Stephen, it gets sometimes you to be too stationary here. This just gets the arm being picked up, flicked up with your hands, and then flicked down. It loses power, it loses accuracy, and you just struggle to strike it consistently. Simple exercises like this can really initiate the motion. Do you need to stick with that all the time? No. Once you get the feel of it, what you can do is you can go, right, I get the feel of that weight moving, so what I'm now going to do is I'm literally going to just feel like I'm pushing into the right heel on the way back, pushing back, and that starts the swings. I'm pushing here, and then I go. You might think, is that going to lead to a sway? No, this is a sway. When you push into the heel, that pushes and creates a turn. But I would suggest to start with, you start with the move, because this will give you all the feelings you want. Now, then we had Tom, slightly similar issues with Fairwood, but he wasn't really creating the arc. We gave him the exact same exercise as this, but he needed one little thing extra. He had no turn. He'd been struggling with his fairwood, and quite not naturally, when you start struggling with your fairwood, sometimes you just stand over the golf ball and you're kind of like this. So what we did with Tom was he was picking the club straight up in the air with no turn. I needed to give him a destination point to turn to. So what we did was I got him to look over his shoulder here. An exercise that had been given by great coach called Fred Shoemaker. Literally look over your trail shoulder as if someone's behind you or called your name, and it gives you a much freer motion and a feeling of how to turn back. Very different to look at this. Just, oh, please hit that ball, please hit that ball. All right, so we did this first, initially. Look over the trail shoulder and start to flow, and then eventually, obviously, once you get the idea of where you need to get to, what you then do is you then just flow into it without obviously looking, and just do a few swings backwards and forwards. And he said, oh, I feel my hips going back. I feel, yes, freedom. It felt uncomfortable, to be honest with you, initially with him, but it really, really worked. So let's have a look at this in action. I'm just going to get myself set. I'm going to really free up that motion as much as you can. Not everyone will be able to turn as much. You free up as much as you can based on your physical ability, and then away we go. Okay, so this worked an absolute treat. So great movement back, freed him up. That was enough for him, it really was, because it created a wonderful shape in his actual golf swing. The club came around and it came back around. It didn't just come straight back down on the golf ball. So those were the two major things we did. So in summary, what have we done? 3 things to help you with your fairway woods. Get yourself set up. What? We're trying to put pressure on the golf ball. We want to generate speed and we want to have the right type of shape. How do we do this? Ball position is just in the middle between middle of your stance and the lead heel, somewhere in there. Why? Because we want to hit a slightly descending blow. We don't want it too far forward because we'll hit up on it and we'll thin it along the ground. Next thing, we want to put a pressure on the golf ball. We want to put that face on that golf ball. How do you do this? Get the right sequence. Get the club dragging and lagging so that you put pressure on the golf ball, not flicking and flicking so there's no pressure, okay? How do we do that? Simple exercise. Step here. This sets the swing off. So narrow stance, step to your normal fairway wood stance, and then away you go. You're gonna feel a bit out of control. Go with it. You'll love it, I promise you. It'll feel so natural, but just trust it. Allow yourself to hit a few dodgy shots. And the third and final thing was shape. It's very difficult to get shape if you don't move the body out of the way, but you need to know how to move it out of the way. Look over your trail shoulder. Don't look around it. That would lead to this type of look. We don't want that. Look over your trail shoulder. It will give you a destination point to go to. Then just start to relax and try and swing to that position or as close to it as you possibly can, creating the shape. One final thing. With your fairway woods, sometimes you might not be generating as much speed as you possibly like. Not everyone can hit a 3-wood, remember that. Sometimes you'll hit a 5-wood further than your 3-wood. So if you feel like you're not hitting it far enough at times, maybe go up to having more loft. Loft is your friend. All right, so hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, maybe share it with one of your friends. And remember, there's a free practice plan you can download in the description box below that you can just simply take to the driving range. You don't have to remember a thing, and hope that helps. Of course, look, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to press that subscribe button and the bell so I can give you more content like this every single week. But until next week, have a great golfing week.